Welcome to Beyond Stillness. Stories After Stroke is made possible by our guests and the tax-deductible donations of generous listeners like you. Join us in empowering stroke survivors through stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope. Visit www.beyondstillness.org or click the donation button in the episode description to sponsor a guest on their reflective story crafting journey.
Mary's story is made in collaboration with the Living with Aphasia project. To learn more about the Living with Aphasia project, please go to www.writingwithaphasia.org. Hello and welcome to Beyond Stillness Stories After Stroke. Today we meet Mary, a teacher who knew her calling from childhood, organizing her cousins into line while playing school in Lynn, Massachusetts. For 24 years, Mary taught with passion until her stroke, January 28, 2010. She couldn't speak at all for 3 months, only shaking her head yes or no. Her first word that came spontaneously was tailgate. Mary returned to teaching by applying her own lessons, practice, patience, and wait time. Now, Mary brings those same tools to the aphasia community, showing that the wisdom we gain as teachers can guide us as students in life. Thank you for joining us for part 1, Mary Borrelli's story. I'm your host, Molly Bucola. Let's begin with a moment of pause to honor the way that wisdom has emerged through recovery. And we give thanks. Now, Mary Borrelli's story.
I've lived my whole life in Lynn, Massachusetts. Growing up, we were 5 minutes away from family. Playing school with my cousins, I would say, keep it in line. You will be first, you will be second. That's when I knew that I could be a teacher. In high school, I switched, wanting to be a photographer until career day. um, when the photographer said news happens at 2:30 in the morning, and you are on call 24 hours a day, I said, ooh, that's not for me. So I graduated from Boston College School of Education. While living with my mom battling cancer, I taught nursery school at the Y, and I took her to appointments in the afternoons. She passed away February 18th, 1987. The kids from the Y helped me through this hard time. They drew me pictures and would talk to me and check in on me. How are you doing, Mary? They would ask. Teaching became my calling. I subbed for 2 years in Lynn Public Schools. Please call Miss Borrelli. The teachers requested me because I ruled with an iron fist. Then came the call. I have a full-time second grade position at Washington Elementary School. Oh, yeah, I'll take it. I love the kids. Kids from all over the world. Portuguese, Dominican, Guatemalan, Greek. I joined ELL teaching program to engage the children. I learned that with practice and patience, every student could succeed. I ran a summer drama program with my friend Deborah. We called it So you want to be a star. We created a play based on the great K-pop tree. Every student had a different role. Some painted scenery, someone did makeup, and so on. One fourth grader wanted a limousine for our play. She made a list and called companies for details, and we got one that we could afford. On performance day, we picked each student up in our rented limousine. We gave them sunglasses and rolled out a red tablecloth. They were ready for Hollywood. After 24 years, I applied for a principal but didn't get it. Though the deputy superintendent said I was meant to be a principal. A year later, I became the acting principal at Hood School and loved running it my own way. Then everything changed. On January 28th, 2010, I woke up thinking, oh, I better jump in the shower, get to school early before the kids. I like to chat with them in the schoolyard before class. I turned on my shower. I felt dizzy. So I shut off the shower and returned to my bedroom to rest for 5 minutes. While I was walking toward my bedroom, I yelled, help! But the sound came out garbled. When I didn't show up for my first principal's meeting, my friend and colleague Deborah decided to go check my house. She knocked on my front door. When nobody responded, she ran around the back. My car was there. Something must be wrong. She thought and immediately called 911. When the emergency officers found me, I spoke to them, but again, my words weren't making sense. The firemen put a blanket around me, and I said, thanks. I don't remember anything after that. My recovery became the hardest lesson I'd ever faced. 3 weeks later, I woke up in the intensive care unit at Mass General Hospital. I was soon transferred to Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital and began working with my therapy team. A week after that, my neuropsychologist said, you have to go to get a language evaluation. I thought I would pass with flying colors. When he took me to the third floor and wheeled me in, the test began. My heart sank. I wasn't doing well. I started to cry. He asked me, what's wrong? I told him, I want to go back to my room. I want to go back to my room. I cried and cried. Then I said, I'm going to come back from this. I realized for the first time that I would have to learn to read and write again. It was a long road ahead. My superintendent came to visit me there. At one point, she asked, Mary, do you think you'll make it back to school this year? I looked at her and said, no, I want to take all my time to get better. I had saved up 263 sick and vacation days because I never took them. My superintendent kept visiting me and never gave up on me. I didn't give up on myself either. I'm grateful for her support. After my stroke, there was a progression. First, I could not speak for 3 months. All I could do was shake my head yes and no. Then, when I spoke my first spontaneous word, it was at Spalding, and I said, tailgate. It was because I had gone to Boston College, and there was a rival game that day. During my time at Spalding, I was very anxious. I needed to speak again. I would always ask my speech therapist for extra homework. Working in education most of my life, I knew the importance of challenging oneself and repetitive practice to get to the next level. It was also very difficult to walk after my stroke. I spent 9 weeks of recovery at Spalding. Every day, we would work on my exercise, and I was inspired by my students. I had witnessed students who doubted themselves and were frustrated. But I also had the long view. Time and time again, if they stuck with it, they would learn and grow and progress. I was determined to do that too. My teacher friends, Joanne and Nancy, visited often, and they brought me games from their kindergarten and first grade classroom to help me relearn. More times than not, I would get the answers wrong. We would laugh, and Joanne would say, try again. This was exactly what I would say to the kids when they were stuck. I would say, try again a different way. Joanne and Nancy would also take me out of my room to the park across the street. The movement in the fresh air was nice, but most of all, the laughter. By the time I left Spalding for the step down facility, Sherrill House in Boston, I was doing 3-word sentences. My brother got me the game of Scrabble. In the first phase, I would shake it and pick one out and say, this is K. Good. Then I challenged myself and I would shake the bag again and I would say B and then pronounce the sound that B said. And then the third time I would pick out a letter, say the name of the letter, then the sound, and then think of a word that began with that letter and say it out loud. Progress. That's when I really started to learn the letters and sounds again. Slowly, I began to speak clearly. When I returned home, friends would come over to play Scrabble. Joanne and Nancy would bring other games too. Then Mary Kelly and Kathy DeNino joined us. Then more. It was fun to play with my friends while challenging myself. I always tried to formulate a sentence that had the 5 W's. When, what, who, why, and where. My speech pathologist, Jerry Kaplan, taught me that. August 2010, I finally returned home for therapy. In October, I needed outpatient therapy, but Spalding had a 6-month waiting list. So I went to a satellite location in Medford, Spalding. My speech therapist, Jerry, told me about an intensive 6-week aphasia program at Boston University. I was accepted and was so happy. It was intensive, 6 hours a day for 5 weeks. Then I volunteered for a pilot program called Constant Therapy, which meant daily speech therapy for 6 months. It was intensive in-home therapy. They wanted to see if you practiced your speech enough, would it slowly come back? And it worked for me. I was wondering if I could go to teach full time. So I talked with my doctor, Elizabeth Hoover, PhD, who is the clinical director of BU's Aphasia Resource Program. Then I called a former colleague, Helen, who was the principal at Lincoln Thompson, to ask if I could work with their ELL students. And I wanted to see if I would be able to teach a full week without being too fatigued. ELL means English as a second language. Helen said, sure, there's a lot of help we need from you. So I went and taught the first day. I was so excited for the first day. I wanted to see the kids, they wanted to see me, but I stood against the wall as they arrived because I didn't want to lose my balance. Hi, Miss Borrelli. Welcome back, Miss Borrelli. I always had a helper carrying my bags. In fact, the kids created a list who got to help me when. I had to traverse up and down stairs throughout the day. It was a lot of work, but it went by quickly because the kids and their siblings would keep checking up on me. One day, my foot got stuck on the way up the stairs, and a student asked to help. They ran and found the teacher that could help support me as I leveraged my foot up and out. After school, I would sit on a bench and wait for my ride to pick me up. And there were a group of girls that would sit with me. They were waiting for their gymnastics program to start in the basement. Other times, I would sit alone and think about my day. I would sit and wait for the accessible paratransit ride service, and sometimes they would be late. I was so grateful for all the teachers, faculty, and students who were patient with me. They wanted to help, so they would wait and listen to what I asked them to do. They would then work with me to get things done. As someone living with aphasia, I value when people ask questions and patiently wait for my words, then work with me to move forward. At school, I used what I'd always known worked: patience and practice. I incorporated wait time. I would always say to the students after I spoke, there's 1 minute of think time. While they were thinking, I was also formulating my words so I could speak afterwards. While wait time is a strategy for ELL students, I could use it for my own thoughts as well. I ended up working at Lincoln Thompson for the full school year. And at the end of the year, I had a meeting with Helen and said, "So, Helen, what do you think about my language skills? Do you think the students understand me enough so I can be back in the classroom setting?" And she said, "Of course you can be a teacher again, Mary." The superintendent of Lynn Public Schools said, "I'm so glad this day has come. You earned it." Then she did her magic. In an hour, she called me and said, "Mary, I want to congratulate you on your new position as ELL teacher at Lincoln Thompson." And I said, "What? There's not a job there." The superintendent said, "There is now." I stayed at Lincoln Thompson as the ELL teacher for 10 years until I had accrued enough time to retire at 80%. The hardest part was accepting my new reality. I was sad at the beginning. I used to cry all the time. Even when I went back to teaching for 2 years, I would go in the shower and cry for 5 minutes. I mourned the life I had lost. But then I would say, it's a new beginning. I have a lot of things to offer, and I just have to speak slowly and formulate my thoughts, and I will get them out. Practice and patience. I can do this. I would say to others, "I have aphasia. Do you know what that means?" When they would say no, I explained that it was a communication disorder that resulted from my stroke. What I learned as a teacher served me as a student again. The last message I would like to pass on is patience, patience, patience. Because I live with aphasia, you have to be patient with me. I might have to take a longer time to speak, but I will speak. While I am a student of life, I hope my life teaches.
Storytelling empowers us to share our experiences in a way that invites others to reflect on their own. To close, here's a prompt to spark dialogue with yourself, friends, family, or fellow stroke survivors. What do you hope others learn from the way you live your life? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or now YouTube at Stories After Stroke. Links are in the episode description. Thank you for listening to Part 1, Mary Borrelli's story. For the full story, please listen to Part 2, Mary Borrelli's interview. Remember, as part of the stroke community, you are more than supportive. You are inspirational. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review so that others can find these powerful stories too. To learn more about our nonprofit organizations, programs, or services, please visit beyondstillness.org or find the link in the episode description. Together, we empower stroke survivors to articulate and publicly share their stories of wisdom, purpose, connection, and hope.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Stillness, Stories After Stroke. Help us continue empowering stroke survivors through our reflective story crafting and sharing process. Supporting this work with your tax-deductible donation makes a real difference. Visit www.beyondstillness.org or click the donate button in this episode's link. Consider sponsoring a guest on their story crafting journey and be a part of our growing community of purpose, connection, and hope.